Hey there everybody, we're back again with another video. This video we're going to be focusing in on batteries again, and we're going to be talking about the daisy chain, and I think I've come up with a better version of the daisy chain. So let's jump right into it. This is our original daisy chain setup. If we look at the power that's coming out of here, it's simply just daisy chains right the way across. So in a charging configuration, so you remember from the last battery lesson video, the power goes in here, goes out here, in, out, in, out, in, out. So this one will charge first. Once that one's fully charged, this one will charge. Once that one's fully charged, this one will charge, all the way down the line until all of them are fully charged. Now what I wanted to look at was the actual behavior when the batteries are depleting in this setup. So what I'm going to do, don't want to do that. We want to just remove, I'm going to remove the solar panel from there. We should see that nothing's happening at the moment because our gate is switched off. So nothing's happening. That's just 4 batteries basically sitting there. But we're going to turn this on so that we're applying load onto the end of the chain. And we're going to look at how this depletes. So the way that it works, and if we think about when we were talking about applying charge to a battery while it has load, it slows down the time it takes to go down. Well, that's what's happening here. So this battery on the end has nothing attached to it. So it's going down quite quickly. It's going down one usable second per second, which is the regular discharge rate. But it's also applying charge here, 10 units of charge to this one, which means it's slowed down to what was it? It's about 1 usable second every 6 seconds going down. So what is that in a minute? That's about 10 seconds that you're going to lose in about a minute or so, roughly. I don't know the exact numbers on that, so don't quote me. But it is indeed slower than this. You can see that that one's almost down to 14 minutes. This one has only lost about 15 seconds. So maybe it's about 15 seconds per minute. And these ones should be about exactly the same. Yeah, so those 3 are running quite a bit slower than what this one is depleting. Once this one is fully depleted, whatever's left in this one will start ticking down at 1 second per second, 1 usable second per second. And once that one's empty, then this one will, and this one will. But until then, these ones will continue ticking down at the slower rate because 10 is being applied into the power in of each one. Okay, so that makes sense. So how can we improve upon this model? Well, we're never going to improve the power out. That behavior of fast and slow, 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 and then that one's dead, so that one's fast, and then slow, slow. That behavior is not really going to change. At least I haven't figured out a way to change it. But what we can change is the charging behavior. So remember, we charged that one, then that one, then that one, then that one. And what I wanted to create was something that would charge all of them at the same time, but still allow for that same discharge behavior. And I figured all we needed was more power and a way to switch on and off the daisy chain. And this is what I've come up with, this system right here. And what I'm going to do is explain this system, and then we're going to go ahead and wire up one as well so that you can figure out how to do it yourself. So let's look at the components. The easiest part is our power in. So this is where we've used root combiners on our 4 solar panels to get 80 power out. So that's 20 each, root combine, root combine, root combine, and we get 80 powers each. Remember, these root combiners do not cost anything to run, so what you put in is what you get out as long as it's a root item. And we're going to use that to be our main power source. Now, through using these electrical branches, we can actually divert power into each of these batteries, and I've used 5 batteries in this setup, and I'll explain why a little bit later on, but we can divert power into each of these batteries at the same time. But in order to do that, we need to provide a block from this battery to this battery so that we're not running power out. We need to have power stopped. And we're going to take a look at our little properties chart again. and look at the depletes battery list. So we know the gate doesn't deplete battery, so we could use a gate here. All we'd have to do is manually turn each one off, 1, 2, 3, 4, because there's 4 spaces in between the 5 batteries. But that would be a pain in the butt to do every time. So the other one that does provide a state where it's not depleting battery is the blocker. So we've got power going in here, and if there's power going into the block pass-through, that will stop power going out of this battery, effectively making it like there's nothing attached to that at all. So it puts 0 load on that battery. And that's the way we're going to set it up, because we can actually automate this blocker process. And how we want to automate this is that that block pass-through is powered by our solar panel. So that means when it's nighttime, there's no longer power going through that block pass-through. So then power goes through from your power output on your battery all the way through the chain. And I'll explain how this whole chain works as well. And that's pretty much it. Repeated, repeated, repeated. And finally, we have another setup. Virtually the same setup, but it's used to handle your final power output. So your final 10 power output from this battery here, or your final output from solar, which will come via that line right there. And this just sort of handles putting that all together. Well, not putting it together, but choosing the correct one and then sending it out to whatever you have set up. In this case, I've set up just a really simple laser door opener. So the real end of this whole chain of this particular system would be here, and that's just other stuff. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these charges in here. So there's no charge left in this battery. There's no charge left in this battery, none in this, none in this, and none in this. What we want to look at is the charging behavior. We want to look at how this actually charges up when we've attached the solar panels. So if we start right at the beginning of the chain, we've got this electrical branch right here. Nearly called it a bridge, but it didn't. Electrical branch. And what I want you to do is just have a look. Here's your power out. Here's your branch power out. And think about where that branch is going, which is the input on this, and think about how much I would have set that branch for going into this battery. And if you guessed 10, you were right. So there's 10 going out because 10 is the optimal, most efficient level. If you go less than 10, it's not charging up as fast as it could. And if you go any more than 10, so 11, 12, 50, 100, whatever, it's charging up at the exact same rate as at 10. So 10 is the optimal amount. So that goes into that battery there, and that's going to start charging that battery. Let's follow along this line. So what's remaining here, if we have 80 going in, we've just branched off 10, and this uses 1. So 80 minus 10 is 70. 70 minus 1 is 69. So there's 69 going out of this one into our next branch. And what we're going to do, so the bulk of the power is going to continue on that, so we start the next iteration of this setup. But the branch, if we look at this branch now, it's going up into the block pass-through. So I want you to think about what I've set this one at to block this here. And I'll give you a hint, the minimum amount you can do on an electrical branch is 2. And so to be as efficient as possible, that's set at 2. So think about what's happening here. Solar power going into here, providing 10 to the battery, so it's charging up. The rest, that big rest of the power is running through here. And then 2, so a big chunk of it, everything less 2 power is going up here to the block, which stops the output from that battery, effectively making it look like that. So it's just solar panel with 10 going into this battery. For that battery, that's its existence. And if we look at the next one, because that main power is coming out of here into here, it's actually the same setup. However, I do have to point out where what's happening here. which I just realized I forgot to do. My apologies. All right, let's just quickly hook that up again. But we get the idea of the first one. When there's power going into this block pass through, that stops the flow coming out effectively, according to our chart, making it a component that does not deplete battery. So it's allowing it to charge up in a positive state. Okay, let's take a look at our next one. This is the NOT OR switch. And really what this just is a way for power to either come from here and carry on, or for power to come from here and carry on. Okay, so this first one right here, where we figured out, okay, there's 10 going in, that's exactly what this is. It's just we needed to have those two combine onto a line so that if it was on battery power going out, so unblocked, and battery power going out, that it would go down this line into the next part of the next part of the daisy chain. Or if it was on solar power, it would go up and around and in. And we use the NOT OR switch because the NOT OR switch, if you look in the costs column, the NOT OR switch doesn't cost anything to run, so we don't lose any power by running through that. So keeping that in mind, let's look at this chain. This is the branch going up through the NOT OR switch and into the battery. I want you to think about that. How much do you think that is set at? If you answered 10, you are right, because that is the most efficient power model going into this battery. Okay, so basically just rinse and repeat all the way across until we get to the end and we get a usable power source from one or the other, either from battery power or from solar power. And what happens by the end, and there's a reason why I've chosen 5 batteries and 4 solar panels, is because of how much power is at the end. I'm going to explain that in just a second, but what we're going to do right now is just connect our solar panels to our first bridge and take a look at this behavior. This one is charging at full rate, most efficient rate. This one is charging at the most efficient rate. This one is charging at the most efficient rate. All the way down the line, all these batteries are charging up at their most efficient rate. There we go. And they'll charge up pretty evenly. At least they should, in theory. They should all charge exactly evenly because they're all receiving the same amount of power and none of them have any load on their outputs. So these are all going to charge up until they are completely full. Then, when the sun goes down, these blockers all switch off. Then all of a sudden, your daisy chain from your output on each one is the one that's going through to the next battery. There's your daisy chain going all the way around. So you are actually powering, you still get 10 at the very end from this one. And then it's just depleting. Now, I'm going to explain why I use this particular setup, because if we look at the actual costs of power on these devices, we could start to figure out what we reckon the actual output will be. All right, so we've got 80, and there is 10 electrical branches that are used in this setup, and this is when it's going via solar. There is 5 block pass-throughs. So those block pass-throughs, remember, they take 2 because that's the minimum that they can go out. So there's 5 of those. So that's another 10. So that costs us 20. Each of these batteries we're pointing 10 towards. So that's 50. And if I've added that up right, that leaves us with, well, that's a total of 70, and then we're left with 10. Remember, these NOT OR switches don't cost us anything to run. So that means our solar output should end up being 10. And we're left with 10, which is great. So we've added that up correctly. Now, if we take a look at our actual daisy chain when we're on a battery power situation, like at nighttime, what we need to look at, we don't need to look at any of this stuff or any of the cost, because our final output is actually this one right here. It's the last battery in the chain, and that outputs 10. So 10 will go down and into the blocker as its main throughput. And that blocker shaves off 1. That blocker does cost 1. Then it goes around and then costs nothing going through here. So I want you to think about that and take a guess at how much power output you'll have if we turn off the solar, effectively simulating nighttime. And if you guessed 9, you would be correct. So the reason why this configuration works, like instead of using 4 batteries in a row, if you used 4 batteries in a row, you still end up with 9 output. If you use 3, if you use 10, if you use whatever, you still end up with 9 because this is always the same ending position. But if you use 4 batteries and you have this much power, you actually end up with a bunch of excess solar power left over. So instead of, when you're connected by solar, instead of having just 10 left over, you might have 20 or 25 or just a really big number that's quite far away from our locked in 9 available. That's all we can do with this battery. So in the sense of real world usage, if you have both the solar final output at 10 and the final battery output at 9, when you actually go to construct something after this point, they're both using roughly the same amount of power. You could just put on another solar power if you wanted to run more things during the day. I suppose that would make sense, but then when you went to nighttime and you no longer had solar power and you were running off of battery, you only have that 9 to work with, and all the stuff that's later on in that device chain, you know, the chain of all the things that you've attached to it, stop working until the suns come back out. So that's something to keep in mind with these setups, is finding, you know, the right balance of input and output. Now this setup will work with large batteries, and then your final output ends up being 100 shave off 199. And then you have a lot to play with, and that is a more efficient way of doing it. But then you need to think about your power costs going in. Remember, each of those batteries all of a sudden is going to cost 100 to get the most efficient charge, not just 10. Basically meaning that's a 10-fold increase. So you probably want to look at doing 10-fold the amount of power. So that's 40 solar panels or 8 generators, because remember, we're going for 800 now, and each generator outputs 100. And then your windmills, they're of course sort of varying. So if you want something reliable, that's sort of the setups that you're looking for. And it all just depends on what your final output will be. All right, so let's now have a look over on this side. And this is the same setup, but without the wiring. If you feel like you already understand the lesson, feel free to bounce now, because that's fine. All we're going to be doing is really going through much of the same thing, but showing you how to wire it all up. I'll go through each of the components and then wire them together so that you can see really how it's all working. So what we're going to do is quickly just list off the components. There's 4 solar panels, 3 root combiners, 10 electrical branches, 5 small batteries, 5 blocks, 5 NOT OR switches, and then finally at the end I've just put a counter here to simulate the devices you're going to be powering with this setup. Okay, the first thing we're going to set up is the power sources, and this is just pretty much root combining our solar power so that we can get a total of 80 on these ones. So I'm just going to do like this and combine this array of 2. Then I'm going to combine this array of 2. Oop, standing a bit too close. There we go. We're not going to worry about making it too tidy on these ones. And finally we've got this, which can go across here, here, and then here, here. And if we've done everything correctly and all of our solar panels are working at top efficiency, then we should have 80 out this end. And we do. If your solar panels get damaged, they will output less, and you'll be able to just do a quick count. I've got 4 of them, it's 20 each, it's 80, and just look at your final combined power out. If it's less than 80 and the sun's completely out, then you might have a problem and you just need to fix up your solar panels by hitting it with a hammer, provided you have the resources on your person. Okay, so that's our power source. We're going to leave that for the moment. And we're going to look at the next part of it, which is this actual whole daisy chain setup. But what I'm going to do is just go down to the end and show the end point first. All right, and I want you to be in a headspace for running off of battery power. Actually, no, scrap that. We're going to go the solar power route so we can follow the main power. So solar power out is going to go from over here into here. I'm going to just leave that blank for now because I want to show you it all charging at the same time. No, changed my mind again. We're going to connect it right now. Okay, so that connects into our leftmost branch. Remember, here we are branching out 10 to here, but we're not going to do that just yet. What we want to do is follow the main power going out. So 10 will go out from there, and then whatever's remaining is going to carry on to our next branch. And our next branch is what's providing power for the block. We're branching off 2 for the block. So that will go up to the block. And then this will go out. Let me make sure I've got this right in my head. The main power will go out. Yes, that's right here, because we need to branch off 10 for the daisy chain. So that 10 will go up to here, so it's carrying on our daisy chain. Main power goes out here. So all main power, I mean like the big chunk of power, the remnant power, and goes up into here. We've got the this is providing for the block, and really you're going to start to see a bit of a pattern here. It's the same thing over and over again. Here we go, and we're starting to get the idea. There's our 10 that's going to go up to the OR switch, which will then go back down into the battery. There's our 2 going into the blocker while on solar power. There's 10 going up to the OR switch. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit messy with this now, but that's okay. And 2 will go out the left there. Again, I'm saying what the branch will do, not what the main power will do. The main power is just running through all of these. Okay, so we'll do our branches afterwards. But keep in mind, this whole power line is only active when the sun is out. So power, main power, main power, main power, with, you know, branches taking stuff off from there. And then finally, I'm going to just have a look at the other side because I want to make sure I get this right. Our last one, yeah, okay, so our last one goes into the other branch. Here we go. So our last main power out, across and up to, ooh, there we go. Across and up into this branch, and that was another 2 because this powers this very last blocker, and then finally up into input B. Doesn't really matter which one, and then you get your final output, which is 50. Okay, so we started off with 80 and a power out of 50. That doesn't seem right. Let me just check something. Yeah, 80 in, 79, 77, 74, 71. Oh, that's right. Okay, the reason why is because even though we don't have anything attached to these branches, they do still shave off those 2. So that 2 right there is still not counted in your main out, even though there's nothing attached. Okay, that makes sense. Getting a little nervous there. Okay, let's look at this. So this is the main source of power that's going to be running all the way through when we're on solar power. Let's set up the daisy chain now, which we need to start from here. So this is going to be our electrical setup when we're on batteries, or a battery power setup. So we're going to go here and in through the blocker and then up into our switch. The reason why we're doing that is because we're going to power off we're going to connect this branch to provide power there, so when we're on solar. But I'm not going to do that just at the moment, but I will power out to here, down, we'll go maybe here, and then up to our next step in the chain. Okay, so that's the daisy chain there. Let's do the next one here and in, and then over and up and out. Back over to our next one, and then down into the next blocker, up and out. Same thing, down through the blocker and up and out, and then into here. Okay, so that effectively is our whole daisy chain. If this all had power, you can follow the route of the power through the blocker. It's not blocking anything because there's no power going through the pass-through. So that goes around, around, and remember these don't cost anything. So around, 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 and then eventually ending here where we would have 10 available output. And with that output, we're just going to do the same thing, go through a blocker that's not being blocked here, and then into our not or switch, which would finally terminate with some power here. Now the power is empty on that one, because that's going power out, because there is 2 lots of power going into this at the moment because we don't have our blockers set up. So the reason why, again, this not or switch, if both input A and input B receive power, that will stop power from going out. But our final power 10, this uses 1. We still have 9 going into it. So the reason why it hasn't switched over to battery power, or sorry, it hasn't turned off that battery power going through, is because we haven't set up our blockers yet. But I really wanted to show you the solar energy going up through here. The battery energy is going up into this one. And then we use solar to control the blockers. So if the blockers are on, it switches those off. That's really the theory right there. And it's just when we start to cross over these lines here, it starts to look a little bit confusing. All right, so we're going to now apply our blockers. We need to check that's set at 2. These should all be set at 2. I don't believe I'm setting these up yet. So here, and then into our block pass through. So now that's blocked. So that means we've effectively removed this one from the daisy chain. This battery is no longer in the daisy chain. And if we do that again on here, we'll get the same results for all of these. We're breaking that daisy chain with these ones. So here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Yep, that's all set correctly. And out, and out, and out, and out. And then the same thing up here, we also need to power this final blocker via, and when I connect this, if all the blockers are set up correctly, we should see that power open up so that solar is running through again. So solar is running back through, and we should be at a solid 10, or sorry, 50, because we still haven't connected everything else out. Okay, so everything so far. So now we just need to run power up into these batteries. So we've blocked that daisy chain, and I'm just going to remove solar power just so you can see now those are all unblocked, and it's power running via, so this left green light means that it's running via battery, and we attach this back up again, and we're back onto the right side. So that's our solar side. That's our solar power coming through. Okay, so what we need to do now is provide charge into these. So these are all broken now. All those daisy chains in between, that daisy chain is broken, and we need to power out some power. So here we need to actually branch off 10. So we're going to go 10 and into here. So this is effectively, there's no load on this battery, and it's charging up. Same thing here. We're going to branch off our 10. And out we go. Oop. Hold on. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to attach that directly to the battery. I forgot. This needs to actually go up and into here and then around into the battery, because the power either needs to flow out with the chain or up from our solar. So one or the other. So that's the difference there. Okay. And then another one out and up into our not or switch. Ooh, don't want to forget this. We need to send 10 out. We're going to send 10 out from this one to charge the battery. And we do 10 because the not or switch doesn't cost anything. Here we go. Out, out. And we're going to check that that one's set at 10, which I don't believe it is. There we go. And that's the last one that needs to be set at 10. And there's our flow of power going into this battery, which should leave us with 10. Yes, it does. Okay, so we did it right. So while this is on solar power, each of these is charging up at the same time. Which means that we don't, with this setup, we don't have to wait for this one to charge up, then this one will, then this one will, and this one will, which is kind of like trickle charging. This is actually simultaneously charging. And then when we stop solar power, then we're back to the best case scenario that we can get with a daisy chain. And on top of that, it's all pretty well balanced with our final power output. So on solar, your final power output is 10. And on battery, your final output is 9. It's pretty balanced that whatever devices you put at the end here, when they start using power, that there's about the same. You're not getting too many devices that are going to switch off during the nighttime that you can't use that you can during the day. So it's a little more efficient. So 9 output, and just a reminder that these switches, or sorry, these counters take 1, so it's showing what the output. So 9 in minus 1, 8. Okay, that pretty much takes us through the whole advanced daisy chain setup with simultaneous charging. All right, if you have any questions, shoot them down in the comments. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. See ya.